Hello, this is Dr. Jianing Chen from BNU HKBU UIC. Welcome back to my course, The Studies of Contemporary Chinese Linguistics. This is Chapter 8, the Cognitive Linguistics of Chinese Language. Here's the outline of this chapter. We're going to first define cognitive linguistics, and then we'll introduce the background of that approach. We're going to introduce actually three competing approaches of the study, including the Transformational-Generative Grammar and cognitive semantics proposed by Lakoff and other scholars, and mainly talk about categorization and idealized cognitive models. Finally, we will talk about cognitive approach to grammar, including the valence. Okay, here let's talk about the cognitive linguistics first. Cognitive, meaning something relating to conscious intellectual activity, such as thinking, reasoning, or remembering, your mental activity. And cognitive linguistics refers to the interdisciplinary branch of linguistics, combining knowledge and research from cognitive science, cognitive psychology, neuropsychology, and linguistics. So is there human activity or intellectual activity related to non-linguistic cognition? Here's my question. You can consider it. Yes, definitely yes. We usually use subconscious, meaning the mental activities just below the threshold of subconsciousness, the part of your mind that contain feelings that you are not aware of. Consider when you are driving, you do not think of any action or response using language, right? You just do everything subconsciously. This is something non-linguistic cognition. You can also compare that phenomena to the talking, for example, in sleep or talking in dream. Those are some activities related to language. Those are linguistic. But they are also subconscious. You don't think of something using language intentionally. There's a controversy around cognitive linguistics. There is scientific and terminological controversy around the label cognitive linguistics, which means there's no consensus on what specifically it meant with the term. While in general, it refers to an approach to language that is based on our experience of the world and the way we perceive and conceptualize the world. The background of cognitive linguistics is much related to a critical review written by Noam Chomsky in 1959 of Skinner's work named Verbal Behavior. B.F. Skinner's work described controlling elements of verbal behavior, meaning the linguistics, with terminology he invented for the analysis, such as those in this page. Here list some examples of the verbal operands in the analysis, such as mand, used in the motivating operation. The result, the consequence of it, is to directly effect, such as in the sentence, I want milk, said by a child, and then the mother of the child opened the refrigerator and gave the child milk. And that was because the mand the demand or request asked by the child. Demand here meaning such functional communication. And similarly, the tact, also used in social conversation, and introverbal, echoic, they refers to the functional expression using in different situations, including the feature of physical environment, verbal behavior of another person, and so on. And there are sometimes expression of autoclitic to express one person's own verbal behavior, such as I think, blah, blah. Okay, in the review, Chomsky proposed that children acquire their first language without being explicitly or overtly taught in a way that would be consistent with behavior theory. Skinner's theory of operant and behavior reinforcements are not able to account for the fact that people can speak and understand sentences that they have never heard about. Chomsky's model is called Transformational-Generative, and his rejection of behavioral psychology helped bring about a shift of focus from experimentism to mentalism in psychology under the new concept of cognitive psychology. And Chomsky considered the linguistic as a subfield of cognitive science in the 1970s, but he later called his model TG grammar, Transformational-Generative Grammar. Well, here is another theory we usually call Lakoff-Langacker agreement. In early 1980s, George Lakoff, with Ronald Langacker and other new Darwin linguists, picked the name Cognitive Linguistics for the new framework to undermine the reputation of Chomsky's generative grammar as a cognitive science. So altogether, we have at least 3 competing approaches for cognitive linguistics. They are different representatives, including first, by Noam Chomsky, Transformational-Generative Grammar, and number 2, Lakoffian Langacker is the inventor of the term of cognitive linguistics. And besides, there are approaches other than above too. And then among them, I think there's a more effective way, which is a neutral one. They regard cognitive linguistics should not be taken as the name of a specific selective framework, a particular method, but as a whole field of scientific research that is assessed by its evidential rather than theoretical value. As long as effectively used, it can be some method of that field. Okay, let's introduce approaches. The first one, Chomsky's generative grammar, it functions as a source of hypothesis about language computation in the mind and brain. So to compare human brain with computer. And it studied behavior, instincts, and the biological nature of cognitive linguistics, providing a computational representational theory of mind. Like the example of sentence that proposed by Chomsky in English is the man who is hungry ordering dinner, which is very strange. It is so rare that it is unlikely that children will have heard them. Those sentences must be created by the individual of child creatively. So the structure is not learned but acquired from an innate cognitive language component. So this method takes tasks to find out innate structures through introspection in order to form a picture of the hypothesis language faculty, language component of human being. And Chomsky's generative grammar promotes a module view of the mind, considering language as an autonomous mind model. It believes that language is separate from mathematical logic, a different kind of logic, linguistic logic. Inference plays no role in language acquisition. So this explains some situation when a child is very good at language speak, but bad at mathematics. And the generative here, this conception of human cognition is also influential in cognitive psychology and computer science. They all use those generative words. And the narrow sense of cognitive linguistics started in early 1980s, as I mentioned, when George Lakoff's metaphor theory was united with Ronald Langacker's cognitive grammar, following with subsequent model of construction grammar. There are two approaches to linguistics and cultural evolution, including conceptual metaphor and construction. So this sense of cognitive linguistics is influential in linguistics, translation, literary study, education, sociology, and even theology, many social sciences. And cognitive linguistics believe that language forms an integral part of human cognition. And any insightful analysis of a language phenomena will need to be embedded in human cognitive abilities. So the linguistic feature here is linked with national, ethnic, or cultural feature. Some expressions in a particular language is probably may be unique. And let's discuss some examples in Chinese. Chinese say 桌子上面有本书, but we seldom heard 书下面有张桌子. Always use 桌子 as the subject of sentence. And you can also compare the expression of 我的妹妹 and 我妹妹. They are all acceptable in Chinese. While 我的书 is acceptable, but 我书 is not. This is something unique of the sentence 王冕死了父亲. 王冕 here used as the subject of the sentence, while it is his father who have died. Take action or used as an agent. And cognitive linguistics focus on cognitive or semantic explanation for conceptual structures in language. And systematic structure found in language reflect a systematic structure within the conceptual system. And the way the mind is structured can be seen as in a part of reflection of the way the word is structured and organized in a language. So particular group of people with a unique language use sometimes particular way to express themselves, but sometimes they can be ambiguous. Like in the sentence following, 他给他老婆打了一顿. What's the meaning of that sentence? Who beat whom? 他给他老婆打了一顿. It can means both. Means he was beaten by his wife or he beats his wife. While those two sentences means the same. 中国队大胜韩国队 or 中国队大败韩国队 means the same. Defeat Korean team. It's very interesting. It reflects some conceptual understanding or expression of Chinese. Here's another example of naming which reflects the conceptualization and the lexicalization. Let's talk about sweet potato. It had many names in dialects of China, and the names are depend on sometimes origin, sometimes because of the color, the smell, or the shape of the sweet potato. For example, sweet potato sometimes can be classified as a 薯, potato 薯, or 玉, while in other cases can be also classified as a 瓜, melon, 地瓜, 红薯, 白薯. They are named according to their color. 甘薯, 凉薯, they are named according to their smell or feeling. So this reflects a different method or different perspective to conceptualize the word. Here's a group of examples of the trees, different trees in Chinese. They all named as a particular modifier and a tree. For example, 松树, 橡树, 柏树, 桦树, 榆树, they are all 树. While in English, they're naming in different ways. 松树 is a pine, 橡树 is oak. The roots of such words have no connection. This reflects a different method or different worldview of English speaker and Chinese speaker. And similarly, in Chinese, you can say 博物馆, 旅馆, 宾馆, 茶馆, 理发馆, 图书馆, 大使馆, 领事馆, 饭馆. A lot of 馆, but there's no counterpart of 馆 in English. 博物馆, 图书馆, 旅馆, 大使馆, they named differently in English. So these also reflect the worldview and conceptualization difference between Chinese and English speaker. Here's a group of similar example of 笑, 欢笑, 暗笑, 滑笑, 微笑, 憨笑, 狂笑. There is some kind of a smile or laugh. But in English, they use different words to express those similar meaning. They are similar in Chinese, but not similar in English. And we need to also mention the term of kinship, which is very interesting. For example, there are sometimes counterparts between English and Chinese. Father, 父, or dad and 爸, mother and 母, they are one by one matched, can be translated in directly. While there's no counterpart of, for example, parent. Parent, used as a singular, refers to any one of the mother or father, but in Chinese, you only have 双亲 or 父母, such plural concepts. And grandparents can refer to one of the any four members in a family, 祖父母 or 外祖父母. But they only use one word in English. Brother do not distinguish age. While in Chinese, you need to distinguish 哥哥 or 弟弟, 兄 or 弟. So these concepts address the interrelationship of the conceptual structure into large structural system, including the metaphoric mapping, or sometimes used semantic frame, or something between text and context. While in other situations, of the grouping of conceptual categories. For example, in Chinese, we sometimes say 吃食堂. It means you have dinner or have lunch at the cafeteria, but you are not eating cafeteria. But there's no formal difference of the words 吃 or objects 食堂. Here, 食堂 is a place, but seems like an object. 我们再也回不去了. 回不去 reflects we cannot go back to the situation or go back to the old good times. But 回不去 literally means the space. We cannot return to the original space. In English, similarly, sometimes we'll say, you are wasting my time, or that flight fare cost me an hour. You use waste or cost to refer to the time, just like refer to money. So the implication is that time is something like the money. Okay, so we need to mention the linguistic meaning, which refers to the manifestation of conceptual structure and the nature and organization of mental representation in all its richness and diversity. So when considering such problem, we need to use 4 guiding principles in the cognitive semantics, including the nature of concepts raised from bodily experience. So as a human being, as a member of human being, you can sense it and express it according to your bodily experience. Number 2, language refers to the concept in the mind of the speaker. I'm discussing my personal idea. And meaning represents is encyclopedic. Meaning can represent everything. And finally, meaning construction is conceptualization of the reality. The meaning must reflect the reality, the facts, or at least your understanding of the facts. So let's talk about the categorization first. It is kind of a human ability to identify perceived similarities between entity and group them together, and it relies upon and give rise to concepts. There are 2 basic principles that guide the formation of categories, including cognitive economy. Means human attempt to gain as much information about its environment while minimizing cognitive efforts and resources. For example, we're not supposed to give all the tables or desks a name. We generalize them as a table or desk. In English, in Chinese, which is more simpler, 桌子. So it's much more categorized in Chinese 桌 than in English, because English used at least 2 words, table or desk, depending on their function. And the second principle is perceived word structure. Refers to human rely upon correlational structure in order to form and organize categories. Well, how do we categorize the world? You can think of this question, this exercise. Please name 5 types of animal: bird, fruit, vegetable, furniture, and so on. Any one of it. Name 5. And order them depending on their typicality. Here we use the concept of a prototype, meaning a relatively abstract mental representation that assemble the key attributes or features that best represent instance of a given category. In language, the prototype is conceived as a schematic representation of the most salient or central characteristics associated with the member of that category. For example, I've ever asked you to give 5 examples of animal. I think most of you consider dog, 狗. Okay, if you give examples of animal, probably you may think of dog, because dog is a very frequent prototype that we usually think of or mentioned in our daily life. And if I further ask you to name 5 types of dog, probably different people will mention different kinds: teddy, husky, or anything. And this is also something ethnic or cultural. That means the level of categorization depends on different group of people. Different group of people classify different categorization in different ways. For example, here's a visible spectrum. It shows numerous kinds of colors. In English speakers usually classify generally the colors into red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. 7 kinds. And similarly, Chinese use 赤橙黄绿青蓝紫, also 7. But they are a little bit different. And sometimes they are overlapping using different ideas. Because, for example, Blue here in Chinese sometimes translated into 蓝 or 青, depends on different context. While for those extreme situations, there are very limitation of the number of the color terms for some particular ethnic groups. For example, in some language, there are only 2 or 3 number of colors name, including black, white, and red. And there's also fuzzy category boundaries in different expressions. I'll give you some linguistic example. For example, the conversion of word classes is very common in Chinese language, since there's no formal change of those words. For example, the adjectivization of nouns is very common. For the noun 绅士 means gentleman, sometimes can be used as a attributive adjective, 绅士风度, to attribute the style of the 风度, the manner. And you can also say 很绅士, which is a predicative usage as adjective. And 996 is a buzzword, and now it can be used as an adjective also. 太996了. And verbs can also be used as an adjective sometimes. For example, 卷起来, roll is an action, is a verb originally, but nowadays we tend to use 太卷了, means intentional computation is very serious, severe. And this theory can also explain the situation of polysemy. For example, 算账 has a different meaning in different contexts in Chinese. The basic meaning, the original meaning is counting, 算账, count the number, calculate. For example, 你别打扰他，他正在算账呢. This is the original meaning. Well, it can also be used as the extended meaning, meaning revenge, 报复. For example, 好了，这回算你赢，下回我再跟你算账. I will revenge you next time. Another example, 水分. Basic meaning is the water inside. For example, 植物是靠它的根从土壤里吸收水分. Well, it can also be used metaphorically to refers to 比喻夹杂的不真实成分的 fakeness inside. For example, 他说的话里有很大水分. Many fake information in his words.